Focusing now on the idea that Gen Z are a unique environmentalist generation, we find the data suggests a much more complicated picture. We first encounter a significant period effect. In Britain, the idea that we are facing a climate emergency has entered mainstream opinion. In any survey where you ask about concern about climate change, around 8 in 10 of all types of people will say that they are worried. Our recent polling is no exception. Between 3/4 and 8 in 10 of all generations agree that they are concerned about climate change. All generations also face the same competing priorities. In the Ipsos Issues Index, we asked people an open-ended question about what they see as the biggest issues for the country. And almost invariably, the answer is not climate change. It is the NHS, the pandemic, and the cost of living. Our long-term trend shows that the proportion of each generation who mention climate change as a concern is firstly low, and secondly close to all other generations. Even in 2021, the year when Britain hosted COP26, just 1 in 5 of all generations mentioned pollution and climate change as an important issue for the country. In recent years, Gen Z has been at the top of the generational lines on concern here, but the difference is just a few percentage points. The longer-term data that exists suggests that we've seen a period effect, with all generations becoming more concerned. Data from the UK part of the European Social Survey looks at how much people identify as someone who cares for nature and the environment. What this shows is that the eldest pre-war generation has always been more environmentally minded, and that between 2002 and 2018, other generations have moved to catch up. Younger generations have been at the bottom of this trend. In 2002, when millennials were 24 and under, just 42% identified as someone to whom looking after the environment was important. If we look at 2018, when Gen Z were 22 and under, 61% agreed, but this was still the lowest score for any generation. If we look at more recent data, we can begin to perceive some differences in values perhaps. But these are not unique to Gen Z and instead common to the two youngest generations. For instance, while concern about the environment is level, the proportion who feel guilty about their impact on the environment is not. This feeling is higher among Gen Z and millennials than Gen X or the baby boomers. But while guilt is higher, we still can't say that Gen Z are the greenest generation. In common with other young generations, disengagement is high too. In Ipsos's global sustainability segmentation, Gen Z over-index in both the most concerned activist group, but also in the least engaged, disengaged denialist segment too. So it might well be that while Gen Z contains its fair share of activists, they also hold a large proportion of those who are least engaged with climate change. Either those who are fatalistically resigned to climate breakdown, or those who don't really care either way. Our analysis suggests some emerging areas of consensus on Gen Z values. They are indeed a more liberal generation, and not just because society has moved in a more liberal direction. On issues such as censorship, they occupy a highly liberal position at an early age, which is likely to become more liberal with time, moving the whole of UK society in the same direction. But they are not always, or even often, the main driver. UK society is evolving, and Gen Z are often the crest of the wave, rather than a new current. But there's limited evidence that they are a more activist environmental generation. In fact, they may be more divided on this than older cohorts. Here, the period effect of a more environmentally minded society is more important. We are all getting more worried about climate change. Where we might be able to see some differences is in how far different generations are willing to go to fight the climate crisis. And while Gen Z appear more guilty and likely to act, this is also true of the millennials. Finally, this generation is still very young, and there's a long way to go. The youngest of this cohort may be just 10 years old, so we won't understand the full picture for another 10 years. Which highlights one other finding from our polling. Gen Z, as the youngest age group, have greater plasticity in their values. We asked each of the generations how frequently they change their minds on a range of topics from the mundane to the profound. In every case, Gen Z were the most likely to have changed their minds. For instance, 4 in 10 of this cohort have changed their mind about which supermarket they do most of their shopping with in the past 12 months. A third have changed their go-to source for news and information, and almost a quarter have changed their opinion on whether or not there is a God. The concept of generational analysis tells us that opinions, attitudes, and values are most flexible when we are young and become ossified as we age. So while Gen Z are still young, it seems likely that their character and values is liable to change further, requiring future research.